Now, so far, we've looked at direct objects and indirect objects, and both of these are used in sentences that contain transitive verbs. Sentences that contain intransitive verbs don't have objects of any kind. The action of the sentence basically stops with the subject and the verb. Of course, modifying words and phrases may be added, but none of those constitutes an object of the action. Now, what about the third type of verb, that is the linking verb? Well, linking verbs are used with a different type of sentence complement known as subject complements. A subject complement is a noun, a pronoun, or an adjective that follows a linking verb and refers to, describes, or modifies the subject. Remember earlier in this program when we talked about how linking verbs work, we pointed out that linking verbs always connect the subject to something that follows the linking verb and which is being equated to the subject. We're being told that the subject is what follows the linking verb. Well, what follows the linking verb is a subject complement, and it will be either a noun or a pronoun or an adjective. Of course, other modifying words and phrases may be added, but when you're looking for the subject complement, you want to look for a noun, a pronoun, or an adjective following the linking verb, which is in some way being equated to or linked to the subject. Here are some examples. Virginia Woolf was a novelist. Was is the verb in this sentence, and it's a linking verb. As we've said many times, the most common linking verb is the verb to be, and was is a form of the verb to be. The subject of was is Virginia Woolf, a particular woman's name. So Virginia Woolf was, and what follows is the subject complement. The noun novelist describes or modifies the subject Virginia Woolf. It gives us more information about Virginia Woolf. It tells us what Virginia Woolf was, specifically a novelist. So was, the linking verb, is linking Virginia Woolf and novelist and telling us that the two things were equated to one another. Virginia Woolf was a novelist. The two things are one and the same. So this is a classic example of a linking verb being used to connect the subject to a noun, novelist, which is the subject complement. Here's a different example. The world's greatest bullfighter is he. What's the verb here? The verb is. It's another form of the common linking verb to be. What's the subject of the verb is? The subject is bullfighter. That's the noun, which is the subject of the verb, and the other words there give more information about bullfighter. Which specific bullfighter? The world's greatest bullfighter. Now, what follows the linking verb is the subject complement. We said that a subject complement may be a noun, a pronoun, or an adjective. Here's an example of a pronoun being used as the subject complement. He. This is a rather unusual kind of subject complement. You probably don't hear a lot of sentences like this. And indeed, pronouns are the most unusual kind of subject complement. But we thought we ought to give you this sentence because we've made the point that a subject complement may be a noun or a pronoun or an adjective. So here's an example using a pronoun, he, as the subject complement. Notice that the pronoun he rather than him is correct. We have a separate program in this series which talks all about using pronouns correctly. And we'll talk about pronoun case in that program. And pronoun case is what differentiates he from him. When a pronoun is being used as a subject complement, you would use what's called the nominative case, which is he rather than him. And that's technically why he is correct. This kind of sentence doesn't come up very often. Perhaps the most common situation in which the use of a pronoun as a subject complement comes up would be when you knock on someone's door and they say, "Who's there?" and you respond, "It is I." That would be a common use of the pronoun I as a subject complement. And because it's a subject complement, you want to use the nominative case I rather than me. So "it is I" is correct rather than "it is me." It's a small matter, doesn't come up a lot, but we've covered it now, and we're ready to move on to our third example of a subject complement. Sandra looked happy. Here, the verb is looked. The subject is Sandra, And looked in this case is being used as a linking verb because what follows isn't receiving the action of the verb, but rather it's equating or being equated to the subject. What follows is the adjective happy, which describes, modifies, refers to, or gives more information about the subject. We're being told that Sandra was happy. So Sandra and happy are being equated to one another. We're being told those two things are one and the same, Sandra and happy. So looked is acting here as a linking verb, and what follows is an adjective being used as the subject complement. So once again, a subject complement follows a linking verb, and it can be either a noun or a pronoun or an adjective. And just like the other forms of sentence complements that we've looked at in this program, a subject complement may be compound. In other words, there may be more than one word included in the subject complement, and the two or more words would normally be joined by a coordinating conjunction. For example, Gary is a singer and a dancer. Here we have the linking verb is, linking the subject Gary to two words which are nouns, which are the subject complements, singer, dancer. One more example. My favorite sports teams are the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Rockies. Here the linking verb is are, teams is the subject, more specifically my favorite sports teams, and there are two nouns that serve as subject complements, Denver Nuggets and Colorado Rockies. Another example of how the subject complement can be compound. Try your hand at the next exercise in your study guide, which will give you a chance to practice the skills and information we've just shared with you. In some of these sentences, but not all, there's a subject complement. Let's look at each one and see if we can locate the subject complement. First, the original nickname of the Houston Astros baseball team was the Colt 45s. First, look for the verb. The verb is was, and it is a linking verb, and that means we can probably expect to find a subject complement here. What's the subject of the linking verb was? The answer is nickname. We're being told in this sentence what the nickname was. Specifically, which nickname? The original nickname of the Houston Astros baseball team. But the noun nickname is the subject. And what's the subject complement? Where are we told what that nickname was? The answer is the Colt 45s. That's a noun that's being linked with nickname, and the two things are being equated. The nickname was Colt 45s. So Colt 45s is the answer. That's the subject complement in this sentence. Next example. Many investors use mutual funds as a way of buying shares in a wide range of companies. The verb here is use. Now, is use a verb of action or a verb of being? Well, the answer is it's a verb of action. It tells us something that the subject, investors, do, rather than something that they are. So use is not a linking verb. In fact, it's a transitive verb, and therefore will not be followed by a subject complement. What follows the transitive verb use is mutual funds, which is the direct object of the verb use. So this particular sentence doesn't contain a subject complement. Remember, only a linking verb will be followed by a subject complement. Next, after being reupholstered, the wing chair looked new. What's the verb here? The verb is looked. The subject is chair or wing chair. So the chair looked something. What did it look? It looked new. New is an adjective which describes or modifies or gives more information about the wing chair. So new, that adjective, is a subject complement. Looked is being used here as a linking verb. We're being told, in effect, what the wing chair was. It was new. The linking verb looked is being used almost as the equivalent of the verb to be. And so what follows, the adjective new, is being used as a subject complement. Next, Ronald Reagan became the oldest person ever to serve as President of the United States. What's the verb here? The verb is became, and the subject is Ronald Reagan. So we're being told in this sentence what Ronald Reagan became. Now, became in this sentence is, again, being used as a linking verb. What follows it is what Ronald Reagan was. Once again, the linking verb, even though it's not, in this case, a form of the verb to be, is being used almost as the equivalent of the verb to be. And what was Ronald Reagan? Well, he was the oldest person ever to serve as President of the United States. The noun person is the subject complement in this particular sentence, and all the other words that follow the verb there serve to give more information about exactly what kind of person, the oldest person, and so on. So in this particular sentence, the linking verb is became, and the subject complement is the noun person. Our final example. The hikers were exhausted and ravenous after their trek up Mount Washington. What's the verb in this sentence? Well, the verb is were, and were, of course, is a form of the verb to be, which is the most common and important of the linking verbs. The subject of the verb were is hikers, and what follows the verb were is what the hikers were. Therefore, it's the subject complement that gives us more information about the hikers. And the hikers were two things. They were exhausted and ravenous. Those are both adjectives which give more information about the hikers. So in this case, we have a compound subject complement. Two adjectives joined by the coordinating conjunction and both of those words go to give us more information about the subject of the linking verb were. Let's quickly review. In this program, we've talked about three kinds of sentence complements: direct objects, indirect objects, and subject complements. Remember that direct objects and indirect objects are used only with transitive verbs, while subject complements are used only with linking verbs. Now let's step back for just a moment. We've seen now how complete sentences are constructed. There's a verb in the middle, a subject usually appearing before the verb, and then very often a sentence complement of some kind that comes after the verb. You might almost think of a sentence as a lever or a teeter-totter, something like a seesaw, with the verb as being the fulcrum, the balancing point in the middle. The subject usually comes before that, and the sentence complement, if there is one, comes after that. You now have the complete structure of what most typical English sentences look like. And all the other words and phrases that may be added onto the sentence serve to give more information about or to modify the subject or the verb or the sentence complement. So if you understand how these three major parts of a sentence work together and how different parts of speech can be used to modify or give more information about them, you'll understand how virtually every English sentence is constructed. And that will make it much easier for you to create your own English sentences that are both grammatically correct and express your ideas clearly. I hope you found this program useful. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on other programs in this series.